Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're diving into a pretty fascinating passage, actually. First Chronicles chapter 26.
Yeah, it's one of those chapters that maybe seems a bit dry at first, just lists of names, roles.
Exactly, lists and numbers. But when you dig in a little, it gives this incredibly detailed picture.
It really does. It's like an organizational snapshot of ancient Israel, especially around the temple during King David's time.
Right. It's not a story, not really a big theological argument here. It's granular.
Super granular. You get people, their families, and these really specific jobs they had.
It's almost like finding, I don't know, the ancient equivalent of an HR manual or an org chart for a huge institution from, what, 3,000 years ago.
That's a great way to put it. And our goal here, I think, is to unpack that.
Mm.
Who were these people? What exactly did they do?
And maybe why? Why this level of detail? What does it tell us about, well, what they valued back then?
Okay, so the chapter kind of sorts these jobs into three main buckets, you could say,
Oh, yeah.
all centered on serving the house of God. But interestingly, not just inside the temple doing rituals. It goes way beyond that.
And these are mostly Levitical roles we're talking about.
Mostly, yes. It reflects that whole tribe's unique function within Israelite society.
Okay, so let's jump into that first main category. Who comes up first in the chapter?
First up are the gatekeepers. Now, gatekeepers might sound kind of basic, right? Just letting people in and out.
Yeah, maybe security at the door.
But the text makes it clear pretty quickly. These were much more than that. They were guardians. They controlled who got into the temple area, a really vital security role, but also management.
And it gets specific about the families, doesn't it? I remember seeing names linked to the Korahites and the Merarites.
Exactly. Two main branches of the Levites, people like Meshlemiah, he was a Korahite, and Hosa from the Merarites. They're named as key figures.
And it even lists their sons, their family members who served with them.
Yeah, that specificity is striking. And then there's Obed-Edom, another Levite. His family was really heavily involved in this gatekeeping work.
Oh, yeah, I saw that name. And there's that interesting note, isn't there, that God had blessed him.
Right, and the text seems to link that blessing to the fact that he had so many capable descendants serving in these important roles.
Capable, that word stood out to me too. It mentions Obed-Edom's son Shemaiah, saying his sons were leaders because they were very capable men.
And others in the family, too, called able men.
So it wasn't just about who your dad was. It seems like competence, actual ability, was a big factor in these appointments.
Absolutely. It really pushes back against any idea that these were just, cushy jobs passed down. The text goes out of its way to highlight their capability. There's a sort of meritocratic element here, even within this structured, family-based system.
And the numbers involved, it wasn't just a couple of guys at each gate.
Not at all.
The chapter adds them up, like 62 able men from Obed-Edom's family line alone, then 18 from Meshelemiah's, 13 from Hosa's. We're talking about significant teams.
Exactly. Large, organized groups.
Yeah.
And the text emphasizes that these divisions, led by their chiefs, had assigned duties for ministering in the temple of the Lord.
So guarding the gate was ministry. It wasn't separate from the temple's purpose. It was part of it, just as crucial as, say, other Levitical tasks.
Precisely. And then there's the detail about how they assigned the specific posts.
Ah, casting lots. You see that pop up quite a bit in the Old Testament.
Yep. It was their way of, well, they believed it allowed God's guidance in making these decisions, assigning who got which gate.
So who got what?
Well, the lots determined it by family. The east gate, that went to Shelemiah, who's likely the same person as Meshlemiah mentioned earlier.
Okay.
The north gate went to his son, Zechariah. And here's another fascinating detail. Zechariah is specifically called a wise counselor.
A wise counselor. As a gatekeeper, that really makes you think, doesn't it?
It does.
It implies the job was more than just, checking people in, maybe dealing with difficult situations, giving advice, mediating things.
It certainly suggests a role needing more than just muscle. Diplomacy, maybe, understanding protocols, guiding worshipers. That phrase, wise counselor, definitely elevates the role beyond just security.
Okay, so who else?
Then Obed-Edom's family, they drew the lot for the south gate. And his sons were specifically put in charge of the storehouse gates.
Ah, the storehouses. Makes sense those would need guarding, too, given what was likely kept there.
For sure. And then the west gate and another gate called the Shalakith gate on the upper road, those went to other families. The text even says guards were positioned alongside of guard.
Meaning continuous coverage, like overlapping shifts.
Seems like it, a
Yeah.
constant presence. And it drills down even further, giving daily numbers. 6 Levites on the east gate each day.
Wow.
4 on the north, 4 on the south, 2 always at the storehouse. Out west, 4 on the main road approach, and 2 at the court area itself.
Okay, so you can really picture it. This complex system, multiple points of entry, specific staffing levels, probably running 24/7. It just underlines how vital controlling access was.
Absolutely. These weren't minor roles.
Yeah.
They were fundamental to how the whole temple complex operated safely and orderly.
Yeah, looking at just the gatekeepers gives you a sense of a society that really valued order, security, structure, especially around its most sacred space.
And it reminds us that even seemingly straightforward jobs could be complex, needing wisdom, not just presence.
Okay, fascinating stuff about the guardians at the gates. If we move, metaphorically, inside, what's the next big area of responsibility this chapter lays out?
Right. Moving beyond the access points, the second major group we read about is responsible for the treasuries.
Ah, the money and resources.
Exactly. Managing the wealth, all the dedicated items, basically all the valuable stuff belonging to the temple or set aside for God's service.
And again, the source names specific Levitical families, right?
It does. It mentions some descendants of Ladan from the Gershonite line, Jehalel and his sons, are named as overseeing treasuries within the temple. But then it kind of zooms in on one particular family line.
Is this Shubal from Moses' line?
That's the one. Shebuel, a descendant of Moses' son Gershom through Eleazar. He's named as the chief officer in charge of the treasuries. Plural, but with a singular chief.
Suggesting a kind of central oversight? Like a CFO almost?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
A top-level responsibility for the temple's wealth. And the text traces his relatives who shared this work, landing on Shelomith and his family.
And Shelomith's role seems particularly significant.
It really does. The text says Shelomith and his relatives were in charge of all the treasuries containing things that had been specifically dedicated.
Dedicated by whom? This is where it gets really interesting, I thought.
Exactly. It's not just, offerings from everyday worshipers. It lists King David himself.
Right.
Military commanders, leaders of thousands and hundreds, other army officers.
And it even mentions the source of some of this dedicated wealth.
Yeah, plunder taken in battle, spoils of war. These were national assets, essentially, gained through military campaigns that were then consecrated, set apart, and brought into the temple treasury.
Wow, so these Levites weren't just managing donations, they were managing state resources, including wealth acquired through warfare. That's complex.
It is. It bridges the gap between national endeavors and sacred space. And it goes even further back in history.
That's right. It says everything dedicated way back by Samuel the prophet.
And Saul, the first king, and Abner, Saul's commander, and Joab, David's top general. All of that historical wealth was under the care of Shelomith and his relatives.
That's just incredible. Think about the historical scope there. Samuel, Saul, David, they're generals, spanning different eras, different leaderships.
It means Shelomith's group wasn't just handling current income. They were curators, guardians of this accumulated, dedicated wealth stretching back generations, given by the most powerful figures in Israel's story.
The level of trust required there is immense, and accountability. Managing items dedicated by prophets, kings, generals, including sensitive stuff like war plunder.
It really underscores how important honest, careful stewardship of these sacred resources was. You'd need incredible integrity, but also sophisticated organization, record-keeping, security.
Absolutely. It's managing assets that had huge material and symbolic value, representing national history and devotion.
Definitely demanded both trustworthiness and, frankly, serious administrative skill.
Okay, so we have gatekeepers managing access and security, and treasury keepers managing wealth and dedicated items. What's the third main area of responsibility we see in 1 Chronicles 26?
The third category kind of shifts our focus outwards, geographically. These are Levites whose jobs were away from the temple complex in Jerusalem.
Oh, interesting. So their service wasn't all physically located at the temple?
Not at all. The text is very clear. It mentions Kenaniah and his sons from the Israelite branch of the Levites. They were appointed for duties outside the temple, serving as officials and judges over Israel.
Officials and judges. So, involved in legal matters, government administration, out in the provinces, basically.
That's exactly what it sounds like, integrated into the judicial and administrative systems running across the country. And then it gives another example from the Hebronite branch.
Right. This is where Hashaba and his relatives come in. Again, it's a big group, mentioned 1,700 able men from this one family.
A substantial number. And their assignment. They were put in charge of the territory of Israel west of the Jordan River. For, and this phrasing is key, all the work of the Lord and for the king's service.
Both. Work of the Lord and service of the king. That sounds like a blend of religious oversight and civil administration.
It really does. It strongly suggests these Levites were acting as dual-purpose administrators. They were responsible for things related to religious life and things related to secular government in their assigned regions.
So this wasn't just about supporting the temple rituals back in Jerusalem. This was about the day-to-day running of the nation.
Exactly. The practical functioning, the well-being of the whole country. And there's one more detailed example of this kind of regional role.
That would be Jeriah, right? The chief of the Hebronites. And it mentions a specific search was done in the records.
Yeah, in King David's 40th year, a deliberate effort to find capable men for these kinds of jobs, like a talent search.
Huh. An ancient talent search.
Pretty much. And they found this large group over at Jazer in Gilead, which is east of the Jordan River. Jeriah had 2,700 relatives identified as able men and heads of families fit for service.
2,700 for regional administration. That's a huge number.
It's massive. It really highlights the scale of this administrative network David seems to have set up, using the Levites.
And what was their specific area?
King David assigned this huge group to oversee the territories of the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, all the tribes located east of the Jordan.
Okay.
And their job description, same as the group west of the Jordan. Every matter pertaining to God and for the affairs of the king.
There it is again. That dual responsibility. But applied to whole tribal regions. Wow. It really paints a picture of the Levites playing this incredibly integrated role throughout David's kingdom.
Absolutely. Not just priests at the altar, but key administrators, judges, regional overseers, bridging religious and civil authority all across the land.
When you pull back and look at all three groups, the gatekeepers, the treasurers, the regional officials, the level of organization is just striking.
It really is. Thousands of Levites, organized by family, with very specific jobs defined by location, by function, or by geography, all selected for their ability, assigned distinct vital tasks. It's like a blueprint for a highly ordered state.
Yeah, it takes you way beyond the simple image of priests and sacrifices. You see this complex administrative machines supporting the whole kingdom, and the Levites are right at the heart of it in all these different ways: security, finance, justice, regional government.
So connecting it back, 1 Chronicles 26 isn't just some dusty old list. It's a window into a very deliberate system of organization, personnel management, all designed for order, accountability, and effective service.
At every level, too. From the temple gates right out to the furthest parts of the kingdom, it says a lot about how much they valued every function needed to make the whole community work. So, reflecting on this deep dive then, we've seen 1 Chronicles 26 lay out these, well, incredibly specific details about three main kinds of roles.
Yeah, first the gatekeepers, vital guardians, maybe even counselors, controlling who got into the temple space.
Then the keepers of the treasuries, managing not just donations, but national wealth, war plunder, priceless historical items dedicated by huge figures like Samuel, Saul, David.
Enormous responsibility. And third, those administrators and officials serving away from the temple, extending that Levitical role into judging and governing across the whole land, both west and east of the Jordan.
The sheer scale and the precision are what get me. The specific families, the large numbers of able men, the distinct jobs guarding this gate, managing these treasures, overseeing that region for both God and king. It's remarkable detail for an ancient record.
It really is. It paints a picture of meticulous planning, especially under David.
It definitely makes you stop and think, you know?
Yeah.
Here's this ancient text taking care to list the guards at specific entrances with their daily shift numbers.
Right alongside the officials managing justice systems hundreds of miles away and the people safeguarding treasures gathered over generations.
So maybe the final thought for you listening is this. How does seeing this ancient record with its painstaking detail about all these different roles and responsibilities, how does that maybe challenge or confirm our own modern ideas?
Yeah, our ideas about organization, about service, about what tasks we value within any large structure, whether it's sacred or secular, a church, a government, a company.
We tend to focus on the leaders, right? The people at the top, the ones making headlines. But this chapter spends so much time on the gatekeepers, the treasury managers, the regional admins, roles that might seem, I don't know, secondary.
but clearly weren't seen that way then.
Exactly. It kind of prompts you to think about how fundamentally important every single role really is, even the seemingly routine ones, the behind-the-scenes jobs, how crucial they are for the whole thing, the community, the institution, whatever it is, to actually function, to be secure, to succeed.
Every job done by capable, dedicated people was seen as essential enough to be recorded like this, something to consider.